One of the biggest failures that I see in businesses today is their inventory.
Ryan, if you were to share some of the biggest sources of friction in most businesses today, what would they be?
The biggest sources of friction are not really understanding what you're selling. Richard Branson has said it right. It's take care of your employees and your employees will take care of your customers. The way you help buyers buy is by helping sellers sell. If I don't stand for anything, I stand for nothing, right?
Yeah.
And if I stand for nothing, how does anyone follow me? All of these things orient around one thing, and that one thing is communication.
Welcome to episode 13 of The Life of a Business Leader. I'm delighted to be joined by Ryan Chute, who I introduce in a moment. However, the title really grabbed me today, The Frictionless Business Leader. How to remove friction in your business to accelerate profitable growth. And I'm going to love this one. So Ryan, thank you for joining us today on Life of a Business Leader.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm really grateful to be here.
Your bio really intrigued me, Ryan. It said an expert as a strategic marketeer has turned him into the secret weapon for small businesses, aiming to punch above their weight and dominate their markets. So I think we're going to have a great conversation. And as always, with the Life of the Business Leader, it's about how do we add real value for our listeners. So let me punch out the first question. Let's see where we go. How do you define a frictionless business? What's this whole concept of frictionless business about?
You know, when I started hanging out with Roy H. Williams at the Wizard Academy in Austin, Texas, he really kind of approached this idea of communication from such a different perspective. He sees it so much more deeper as a relational model, not a transactional model. So much of us in business are so focused on the transaction and act transactionally because most customers come to us transactionally, and when we can really just shift away from that mindset, that kind of um, less committed mindset, and really think about the long-term relationship, we start to see that translating into relational business, into more profitable business. We start seeing ourselves saying different things and showing up differently to nurture a long-term relationship, not just the sale today. And as you really kind of delve into this, as I have, geez, you really start to see how this translates into your life, with your kids and your spouse and your coworkers and all of the elements, all of the places that you communicate.
And the title starts as the frictionless business leader. And I know we'll get into more talking about the business, but what
Mm.
role does a leader in their business play in creating this frictionless culture? Or how does a frictionless business leader, how do they think, how do they feel, and how do they act?
Yeah, well, you know, I see everybody as a leader, Royce, and every person, no matter what their title is or their authority is, or what the case might be. And I see them as a leader when they choose to do one thing, and that's to navigate using their North Star. Now, there's four different people that you'll meet on the ocean of life. There's surfers, and there's drifters, there's drowners, and there's navigators. And the surfers are here for a good time, not a long time, catching the waves as they come, and enjoying the highs, and blaming the waves on the lows. The drifters are really just bobbing around, hoping for something to happen to them. They have to be the folks who are being told what to do when they need to do something. And then there's the drowners. I'm not talking about drowners like we've all occasionally drowned at one point in time in our lives, be it financially, spiritually, even chemically, emotionally. But I'm talking about the professional drowners. These are the people who have a problem for every solution. And last but not least is the leaders. And leaders have a North Star. The reason why a North Star matters is because it's the only way you can navigate. As leaders know, the North Star doesn't move, which allows you to set your sails and be able to move towards something. Well, the best leaders are are these captains, these navigators. They're the people who have something that they stand for and things that they stand against. And that really comes down to the question of, what are you willing to sacrifice? What are you willing to not compromise? Or what are you unwilling to compromise, to look at it differently? And what is it that you are going to do for the benefit of others?
Yeah.
And that's what people see as true value. I liken this to the North Star. That's your anchor. That's the thing that's not going to move no matter what, the hill you'll die on. And all of your beliefs, well, they're all the other stars, the beautiful constellations and the other stars that move around in the sky. The thing about beliefs is that they're completely interchangeable depending on the situation, which makes them kind of worthless, important and valuable, but not actually helping us navigate or point towards a certain area.
Love that. Love the whole concept. So what I'm hearing, and play back if this is where I've interpreted this correctly, that part of the role of the frictionless business leader is to create a North Star that not only that they buy into, but they can then sell to their people to get them to buy in as well. And actually, a frictionless business leader or a frictionless business then has a compelling North Star that everybody's aligned behind. And it goes beyond just the transactional or the functional part of what you do. It's a compelling North Star that gives you purpose, that answers the question about what cause that you serve, and it's got to be something that's really compelling. Is that a fair interpretation?
Well, it is, and the irony isn't lost on me when we create a North Star, we're going to create friction with someone, right? Like someone's going to be like, "Well, I don't stand for that," right?
Yeah.
And they're not going to be drawn into your flywheel. But that's kind of the whole point, is that this rust that we get on our flywheel, this friction that we're creating, is coming from the the dissonance, the corrosion, the things that don't fit in our space, the mismatches in size and pace. All of the things that you think about in friction are, if I don't stand for anything, I stand for nothing, right?
Yeah.
And if I stand for nothing, how does anyone follow me as a leader? Now I'm speaking as a leader. As we pull this into the fabric of our business, of our lives, of our other tribes that we care about, be it our church or our associations or our businesses, as employees or employers. All of these things, all of these things orient around one thing, and that one thing is communication. And we communicate with people in a dozen different ways, and in those ways that we communicate, we're causing friction intentionally or unintentionally. And as a leader, when we start to orient towards a frictionless environment, we're going to see we have the ability to increase our profitability and increase our acceleration towards growth.
And right, if you're going into a business and you're going in doing an audit about almost trying to assess where they were on their journey,
Mm.
and how much friction they had in their business, what would that pathway look like? What would you look for? What would be some of the telltale signs about whether a business is really agile, whether it's fast and it's dynamic, or it has a lot of friction points in there?
Yeah, absolutely. First place I'm going to look is in the mindset of the people, starting with the leader. What does this leader feel? Are they in a survival thinking mindset? Are they in a fixed mindset? Are they in a transactional mindset, like I was in 2015? Are they hoarding resources and guarding the vault, or are they creative and abundant? Are they willing to be dynamic and humble? Are they willing to abandon the ego for the sake of the relationship? Are they doing the things that translate through policy, through process, for both their employees and their clients, that are making it easier for sellers to sell and easier for buyers to buy, be it the product or solution you're selling or the idea of something that we're trying to sell? When we get the mindset right and we understand whether or not they're motivating or demotivating people into an existence, then I know where the person is, and as a leader, and then how we could fix that throughout the actual framework. Then we start looking at the actual ways that we can do that through motivation and mastering and empowerment and creating a thriving mindset. Until mindset is right, there's not a whole lot more work you can do, because any tactical thing that you put in place, any process, any system is going to be met with drag, right? The drag from the rust, from the tension of the or the friction that's being created from inaligned parts and people.
Do you tend to find, Ryan, that if leaders have come from different backgrounds, so for example, if a leader's predominance is finance or it's risk or it's a really detailed person versus somebody who's come from more of a sales and marketing background and more of the entrepreneurial spirit, are there different kind of skills or backgrounds that necessarily or naturally play out in whether you are a frictionless or a friction leader? I'm just interested in your take on that.
Well, I don't liken it to personality types. The thing that is so frustrating, that we find about personality types as people tend to study them, is that this is how people prefer to be treated rather than how they are going to treat others and how others want to be treated, right? So when we see the slightly misalignment there, what we discover is that if we just go back to something even simpler than that, simpler than archetypes, simpler than personality types, and get just into the true heart of what history in first principles has told us about duality. There's positive, there's negative resonance, there's positive, there's negative good, there's positive, there's negative um, energy that's being pushed towards somebody. Somebody with good intentions can still be foundationally screwing up. The people all can improve. Everyone can learn. Everyone can make a shift and recognize where they're coming in short for others. But it all comes down to one thing that I've seen over and over again, and that's intentionality. What is your intention? Anybody with good intentions can shift the road that they're on. We all know that the road to hell is lined with good intentions, but we can get off that road and onto a more virtuous path by simply recognizing where the poison is and where the poison isn't in that process. And that's what I hope to do for businesses who uh, are using KPIs to weaponize fear, shame, and guilt, as an example, or structuring a compensation plan that helps fund the business rather than support people in the emotional and mental ways that they need to be supported to do their best work. These are just small, simple examples along the way of the choices we make as business owners to either get in the way or get out of the way of profitable growth.
And if I was to say to you, yes, give me two or three exemplars of businesses that you would really put up there on the pedestal of being great examples of frictionless businesses, which businesses or case studies would you talk about?
Sure, a lot of them are unknown, to the overarching universe. They're private companies in the United States that I work with. Um, One is a home services company. They do plumbing, electrical, and heating and air conditioning. And what they've created, as part of their process, their $66 million operation, they're making a hard charge towards $100 million in the next 12 to 18 months. And ultimately, the foundations of what makes them successful is eliminating as much clutter as necessary. So they practice the philosophy of exformation. So information is about all of the things you need to know um, to do it, and that usually comes with an overabundance of things that are said. Where they really just kind of pull back and say how much is needed to know and how much is really just distracting clutter, and they get rid of stuff, right? So um, then that leads into the things that we can do to make things more elegant. One of the things that they do is run a call center that would usually be 40 people strong with about a dozen people. They put in a tremendous amount of automations. They cut down the clutter. They don't do any outbound phone calls anymore. They run that all through text message. And it's designed to make it easier for the seller to sell, easier for the buyer to buy, and creating this simple nuance of exchange for the things that actually matter in their business. Um, their sales process is ultra simplified from a six-step process down to a three-step process. Within each of the three steps, there is a three-step process. So now we have a trifecta going on. This has a much higher cadence of retention and recall for the salespeople, but it also makes it just astoundingly easy for the customers to move through the process. Again, making it easier for sellers to sell and easier for buyers to buy. Uh, Another company that we work with, one of the things that they do is offer plumbing as a service, and they offer free drain clearing in their club membership. Well, they do that for free, where most companies are charging some amount of money and some charge astounding amounts of money. But by by making it really affordable until they get to the thing that's going to cost a lot of money to repair, they get infinitely more opportunities than anyone else. This is another way of eliminating friction from the process to make it easier for the people to do their job. There's a company out west in the United States, down in the Southwest, that spends a lot of time speaking and spending time with their employees, but they never once bring up KPIs. So the conversion rate that they're hoping for is something that they hold as a leadership team accountable to, because they're trying to meet or exceed a KPI. They talk to their staff about the actions and behaviors that got to them the KPI. The second thing that they do is recognize two things. One, how big is their sample size for them to be getting a proper measure on the KPI? And two, have they supplied the technician or the salesperson with the appropriate number of opportunities to be able to get a meaningful return on the investment of appointments and time and energy? So when you start taking some ownership as a leader to the results that you're expecting your employees to have, with sample sizes that are reasonable to get a proper measure in place, you now have an environment where you can actually make a difference, rather than, you know, put a unknowing technician or salesperson up, as a sacrificial goat to be fired for no real good reason, right?
Yeah, you said something a couple of times, which really chimes with me. That how do you make it easier for buyers to buy and sellers to sell?
Yes.
So I know you talk a lot about this North Star, but from a design principle perspective in creating a frictionless business, is
Hmm.
that a good place for businesses to start? Because that for me is a really what I call an outside in view. How easy is it for customers and clients to do business with your business? And how easy is it for your team to do business with your customers? So
Hmm.
creating a frictionless business, is that a great place to start? And it really falls into your expression there. How do you make it easier for buyers to buy and sellers to sell?
Well, one of the crazy friction points that we fail to recognize as business owners most of the time, is that the customer needs to know everything that we sell for them to buy what we have to sell. Well, the reality of it is that it's much easier for a customer to know the one big thing that you offer and do than to know the 58 different things that you sell. And I'm being a bit facetious to make a point here, but the idea is, one big thing is much easier to grab onto. It's not always the nuts and bolts thing that you sell. For example, in a family law office, I don't need to tell them really a whole bunch about what that family law is. Family law is to whatever the person perceives it as, and if they have a family problem that requires law, they're going to call a family law office. So stand for the person who's going to be the best family law person, and what is it that what's your north star in that? One of our clients in the legal space uh, stands for being the morally driven, ethical family lawyer that doesn't go around crucifying everybody and turning the other parent into the evil doer. They find these nice balances. Now, this person continues to grow at disproportionate rates because they're known by the judges, by the general community, as people that are coming at this with empathy and competence, and that stands 600 feet above those competitors that are coming at it with anger and fear and doubt and shame and guilt. Um, and removing other people's dignity. And when you're trying to make things amicable and do what's right for the children, that stands 600 feet above the competitors who are just going in to be the goons.
Some great golden nuggets in here. So I'm going to keep going deeper with these questions.
Of course.
Ryan, if you were to share some of the biggest sources of friction in most businesses today, you would kind of to identify the top three. What would they be?
The biggest sources of friction are not really understanding what you're selling, right? And not having that North Star. Very often companies come in and they're just like, well, we're a plumbing company. What does that mean? Well, it's like we're like every other plumbing company. Okay, well, why would anyone call you over somebody else? And the answer is, I mean, I really don't know why. Right? Because I have a cute mascot, or I have a new truck wrap or some other silly thing. No, none of that stuff matters. People don't follow people who aren't going anywhere. So go somewhere, right? So
Yeah.
that's one of the biggest places where people fall short from a marketing standpoint. The second falls into the sales aspect, and the sales aspect falls short because people love to make way too complicated sales processes. They've got every single thing elaborately drawn out here, and while I am all for having a process, one of the things that one of my mentors and friends said, look, I was sick and tired of all these guys. They're gurus are coming in and saying, hey, I want 6-step sales process, 8-step sales process. There's like a million steps to every sales process. He's like, I want a 4-step sales process. I don't know where he got 4 from. He just pulled it out of his head. And he hires this guy who promised him the world, and comes back months later and says, here's your 6-step process. He's like, I didn't want 6 steps. I didn't want 6 steps. He fires the guy, launches him out the door, and sits down immediately, right in 2.5 hours, gets a 4-step sales process in place after just putting some horsepower to it. Well, I took that as a challenge, So telling me this story, I'm like, well, if you can do 4, I'm sure I can figure out 3. So I spent about 7 months in and amongst my other duties to think about how we could get it to 3. Got it to 3 and showed it to him, and it just knocked his socks off. Well, the reason why that matters is because if we can get something to something that has such high retention and recall for the person to deliver it, it makes it infinitely easier for them to close a deal, right? It's about ignoring and um, disagreeing with the general traditional wisdom, which is far more tradition more often than it is wisdom. And what we boil down to here is that sales and closing are 2 different things. We have to treat them differently. They're both psychologically different. The chemistry that goes on in your biology is different. We have to separate those things. We have to focus in and understand the psychology of motivation and inspiration if we ever hope to inspire or motivate somebody, right? When we know the ingredients, we're much more likely to bake a recipe that's going to be delicious. And that's in sales. And how do we do that? The sales that is happening at the customer endpoint is friction, is full of friction because it's too complicated, or it's too salesy. Um, it's too much try hard stuff that you think matters when you quite come to realize it really doesn't. And that circles back to number 3. And number 3 is the culture. When Richard Branson has always been right about this, has said it right. It's take care of your employees, and your employees will take care of your customers. Your employees represent 90% of your business activity, right? They're the ones actually doing the thing. Well, set them up for the win. One of the biggest failures that I see in businesses today is their inventory. They have an absolutely tragic hodgepodge of inventory that isn't got an ounce of curation to it, not only in the products that they're selling, but in the prices and the payments that they're aligning things to. And that's having a dire effect on their results. It's creating confusion. It's creating this friction, as we say. Confusion is friction. And that friction is stopping the sale from happening. That's where you start to get the stalls and the lies, the objections, the excuses, the complaints about your price, because we haven't created a framework of value that walks a person not only up but back down in the inventory that you're selling, in a price formula that is going to make it super easy. And this can happen in basically every business. Um, and we have strategies depending on what it is you're selling and how you're selling it. But it really boils down to, what can I do to get out of my own way? And and the answer is, I have to take the time and effort and put energy into making it easier for my salespeople to sell stuff, from CSRs at the call center through to the sales and technicians out in field, to the people that are on your sales floors, or the people in your call centers handling inbound sales. Uh, when you do that, you as a leader have created a frictionless environment, or remove friction wherever those friction points are.
And it's a lot of your, so I can really see a pattern building of have a compelling North Star about why you exist, and get your package right of how you position and sell value of why you're different to the competition. Don't be in
Mhm.
a red ocean, be in a blue ocean, as blue ocean strategy, which is one of my favorites. Then you talk about making it easy for the customers to do business with the business, make it
Yeah.
easy for the salespeople to sell. Does your work tend to focus at the front end of the organization, or then does it kind of create a domino effect? So you go, well, actually, are the salespeople selling the right stuff, and therefore, can you, from an operational perspective, make it easy to deliver that? Does it create a ripple effect right the way back through the organization in terms of that whole frictionless business?
It's brilliant that you ask that. I subscribe to um, the concept around the disciplines of market leaders. Is a book that came out in the 80s that kind of outlines the three different business models that people follow. I think that there's four. Roy and I have discussed this a number of times, and that there is a fourth that isn't discussed in that book. But the one that stands out above all, the ones that matter most to the companies that want to scale the most, are going to be the ones that are operationally excellent. And operational excellence means removing choice. It means cutting things down to the simplest of options. It's not about being the solution to everyone. It is to be the solution to 80% of the population, and to sell that at a higher volume, which means my inventory has shrunk down dramatically. My selection becomes easier and more elegant. Um, it's up to me to design that. Now, not all businesses can do that. You know, when you have a highly custom product that is unique to the person that you're serving, well, that's a highly custom solution that you have to provide at a much slower pace. There's a higher profitability to that. There should be, at least, because you're offsetting volume for attention to detail. So it's not a one size fits all. Not everyone can be run it or own an operationally excellent company, but you can certainly create efficiencies in the business by creating efficiencies in your communication. And it all does marry together. So when you think about this delivery of things, this client, air conditioning company out in the southwest of the United States, they sell something over the phone, and an average conversion that used to take 2 hours, they've got down to about 17 minutes. Um, After a technician has spent about an hour doing what technicians do in the house. So all in all, they've given themselves about a 40% lift on their efficiency just in the selling process. When that thing is sold, because they only offer 3 different items in 5 different ways, the customer says yes to something, and a process starts, and within 90 minutes that new air conditioning system is being installed into the house, where most companies are doing it the next day, the day after, or 3 days from now. uh, when you create that level of efficiency to a customer who's making a grudge purchase on something that is broken in the heat of the desert, well, they're motivated to have that thing installed today. Well, when you create a system to do that operationally, boys, you've got a license to print money.
So the expression that I'm just writing down there, that really you've triggered me with something there. a couple of points. One, less is more.
Mm,
And do you think since the pandemic, even like let's take a really simple example like a restaurant perhaps offered 10 different starters, 14 different main courses, 7 different desserts. The wine list was 20 pages. And then suddenly they realized the point I think that you're making there about actually less is more. Let's not
mhm.
carry all this inventory. Let's not have to carry all this stock. Let's offer 3 starters, 4 mains, 2 desserts. Let's do it really world class. And actually, 80-20%, 80-20 principle, 80% of the customers buy 20% of the wine. So let's cut the wine list down to these top 8 bottles. Is that kind of part of what you're talking about there? And do you think since pandemic that actually more businesses have got wise to less is more?
I think gotten wise to it. Yes, it's not a new idea by any stretch, and I'd love to say that I'm the genius behind it, but I'm not. It's and the pandemic certainly did put a highlight on that as supplies got inaccessible. But it really does come down to an age old strategy of creating interest and desire from less, making it easier for the person to make a decision. Now different things have different nuance to them. Something that is highly complex and very detailed, specific to the person, custom tailored to the person, is going to play out differently than something that people really don't understand. um, an air conditioner is not as understandable in a house as a automotive. Buying a car, buying a truck, buying a something that is um, easily accessible and understandable because they touch it every single day. So the dance changes a little bit, but yes, Mazda is brilliant in Canada, United States, for their ability to take their Mazda 3 product down to essentially 9 options. They then basically shift those 9 options into 18 options by offering a sedan and hatch option, and then they change the colors, and it feels like you've got many hundreds of choices when you actually have 18, and really from those 18 you've got 9, and anything that you want to add as a bib and a bob afterwards is just going to be tacked on after the fact from the parts department. uh, so it becomes astoundingly simple to make a choice, right? And there's a beautiful elegance in that for a person to say yes.
And do you think that actually, from a customer perspective, that actually less choice will increase your conversion rate? Because sometimes if as a customer you have too many choices, then
Mhm.
it's easy to go, well, actually I can't choose which one I want, so I'll switch out and I won't make a purchasing decision. I might go somewhere else where they've got less choice and it's easier to decide what's right for me. So is there an actual correlation between getting your proposition really streamlined, knowing your lane and knowing what you're world class at, and
Mhm.
actually therefore the customer has less choice, but in essence they end up having more choice because it's more bespoke and tailored?
Right. So it's an astoundingly counterintuitive concept for business owners and for all, because we've had customers who've asked us for all kinds of different things over the years, basically having done their own research and making wild assumptions as to whether or not that would work for them or not. And the reality of it is broad selection within less choice is possible, right? We have an air conditioning company that offers 5 options, for example, but there's only 3 products when those options. The real shift is coming with the warranty. There's other companies that go highly custom. Every company that I've ever see go highly custom and basically cater to the customer's needs stays highly small. They always, always, always do not grow because they're spending far too much time chasing things around instead of selling the product they stock. And they've the failure point that I see with most of these organizations that try to do that and say, that didn't work, is that they tried to stock things that the customer didn't care about, right?
Yeah.
They stocked things that they liked, but not what the customer cared about. And depending on what you sell, a truck, there's going to be certain things that a customer cares about. In an air conditioner or a hot water tank, there's not. But if you create a really smart solution for those hot water tanks, which a number of my clients have, I'll tell you, you're going to outsell your competition 10 to 1 easily, very quickly.
That is such a powerful message. That for me is my golden nugget from this whole conversation, Ryan, because I think for most business leaders listening to this, that's such an important message to take away, particularly
Mhm.
for businesses in their early stage, because what you end up trying to do is go and say, we do all these things, and you go so large. And actually, your point, do customers really value them? Do they really
Mhm.
want them? Do they really need them? And then
Yeah,
I think what happens over time is you start to then narrow it down as your business gets more mature. And suddenly, whatever that timeline is, you get to the point where you recognize less is more. And
yeah,
actually, how can you accelerate that journey for businesses so they don't need to go through that painful learning journey?
that's right. Well, and think about it, like, all of that inventory is friction. It's drag on your flywheel because it's more and more weight that you're adding to a thing that doesn't need to be there. You know, I'll tell you, I've taken price books for businesses of a selection of goods that they have, from many thousands of items down to hundreds of items at most, in some cases under 100 choices. And they were able to ask more. They were able to be more flexible in what they asked for excuse me, to deliver. And they were able to help their staff as well. Again, this is the way you help buyers buy is by helping sellers sell, right?
Yeah,
So when my sales technicians or salespeople or my people on my sales floor have 5 things to choose from, and they know that what the play is every single time for that particular solution, they get really good at it, right? Because now they're not fumbling and stumbling and trying to find crazy inventory parts numbers and this and that and the other thing, and remember what the name of that silly thing is and which supply house like all the nonsense that goes into slowing everything down, dragging, slowing, right? But when they come off polished and clean, what do they come across as? Competent. They feel competent, they feel more confident. Are they more likely to close because they can stand behind their solution? The answer is
yeah,
yes. Every single time. Less is always going to be more. Uh, and sometimes you have to throw a thing in. One of the things that we have here in America for air conditioning company that just came up this week for me was there's an old refrigerant called R22, and the new replacement for that is R410A, but you have to take out all the old stuff, put in all the new stuff, reseal the system. And it's a terrible idea to do it. It really is. It's just going to make your system far less efficient, and it's going to do all kinds of things that just kind of solve a very basic, immediate, painful problem for a subset of clients. Well, one of the things you have to do is you have to offer that, right? And you have to have a plan for offering that. So that's a piece of inventory. We call it a refrigerant transfusion. And it comes with a reasonable price tag, but it also comes with a litany of consequence that comes from making this choice, not good or bad, just circumstance. This is what happens when you do this. You're going to lower your efficiency. You're going to reduce this. You're going to do that, but it's far less expensive. It's 10 times less expensive than a new system, or 5 times or 6 times less expensive than a new system. So let's make sure you do what's necessary. By presenting this option, you demonstrate your empathy and competence, right? By being brave enough to say, this is absolutely a choice. It's not a good choice, but it is a choice nonetheless for you to make, and we will do it for you. It's not a band-aid solution. It is a proper fix, but here's alternatives, and here's how much it would cost for an alternative. Proximity is one of the most powerful selling tools you will ever have. Proximity is a language of the mind that says, when I see uh, this this pen I'm holding in my hand sitting up against this ball bearing that I have in my hand, I know the size of each in generality. Um, Even me describing this for the people who are listening on audio can go, oh yeah, no, I can kind of get an idea between the two, and in their mind they have now this notion of what it is. Well, when I do that with my products, when I do it with my prices and my payments, when I do it with the solutions that I have to offer, and sometimes I'm putting it in proximity to a thing that's not a good thing to do, they get to choose. And people will be far more inclined to choose between the best of two options than they will to choose between something and nothing.
Interesting. Interesting. So I've got a couple of questions to close out on our conversation here. What trends do you see shaping the future of a frictionless business? You know, and I would imagine one of those is technology in there, but what are the trends that will really influence the future of frictionless businesses?
Yeah, here's what I love about AI. AI is great at producing content and getting information out there that we had in our heads for years as business owners, but can really get out into both video and audio and written formats quite efficiently nowadays. So all of those things that you intended as a business leader when you first started your business, you intended to help people win. And what did that look like? You intended to be trustworthy. And what does that mean to you? And you intended to live a grateful life, right? That humility, that gratitude, that happiness, right? You intended as a leader to provide a healthy, happy, and wealthy environment. Get that out. Get that out. Just speak it out. You don't even have to write it nowadays. Just speak it into the universe. Speak it into Chat GPT and have them re-articulate that in a clean summary so that you can share with people what you intend as a commander. This is the true basis of the mission statements that have been completely mutated over the years by so-called brilliant gurus in the business world. The reality of it is that a mission statement is about how we're going to take that hill, right? Whatever departmental hill you're on. The HR department has a hill that they need to conquer, the sales department does, and every mission is an instance, right? Every sale is a mission. The whole battle, the whole war, the whole campaign is not a mission, right? So get your commander's intent right. I've distilled it down to three big things: helping people win in a trustworthy and grateful manner. And if you just clearly articulate what that means to you and your business, and you speak that out into the universe, you're going to help accelerate the better communication that you're looking for to lower friction in your business because people know what you actually intended.
And Ryan, one final question. A business, when it starts out its life, it's going to be agile, it's going to be dynamic, it's probably fast moving, and the
Mm-hmm.
flywheel probably can turn pretty quickly.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to a business leader to make sure that they can watch out for telltale signals of what I would call marginal erosion creeping in, which are some
Mm-hmm.
of those friction points that start to slow the flywheel down? What words of wisdom can you give to say to business leaders, watch out for this, or these are the telltale signs that you need to be careful of?
There's going to be 12 that I outline in the book that I have being released later this year, waiting for my first final draft to come back to me here this week. And in the book Frictionless, you're going to really kind of look at those telltale signs. I call them the rust on the flywheel, and it's where's the rust creeping up? Where's it things slowing down? Where's a ball bearing, which I tend to liken as the employees of a business? Or what is one getting bigger or not big enough? Is there wobble? Is there clunks? Is there resistance happening? When you feel resistance, lean into the resistance and ask, why is there resistance? Why am I not converting at the level that I want? Why am I getting pushback from employees? Why am I getting a person who says that I've asked them to do something and they're not doing it? When you see the resistance or feel the resistance, be attuned to it and look to make those adjustments, right? Get the sandpaper out, sand down that rust, um, get rid of the problematic people that are causing resistance because they're not aligned with you going in the same direction. But understand that they're not going in the same direction of you if you have yet to define your direction. If you have yet to determine what your north stars are, then you're going to spend an awful lot of time drifting about the ocean.
Love it. Love it. So, in summary, for me, my key takeaway is this: be really clear about your North Star and why you exist. And
Mm.
every single day in your business, be cognizant of looking at where there might be friction points. And that could be people, it could be processes that you put in play, it could be bureaucracy in terms of levels of systems that you've got to go through. How can you just be conscious? And it strikes me from what you're talking about, Ryan, that actually this whole concept of frictionless has got to be built into your culture. It's got to be something that you talk about on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. It's not
Mhm.
something that's part of a annual strategy session. You've got to build this into your culture and into your DNA, and maybe ask that question on a daily basis. Where are the friction points that
Right.
are preventing our buyers from buying from us and our sellers from selling? And if you work back from the front end of your business through everything in terms of operations, finance, every single support function, removing the friction points, then your flywheel will be turning. And as you quite rightly point, it'll there won't be as much rust that's building on it.
That's it. And hinge it on the helping people win in a trustworthy and grateful manner. Those three buckets will basically give you the pathway forward for how you can remove friction at every level of the organization. But yeah, you're spot on. And look, we're just trying to get out of our own way. Remember, this is all the laws of nature. This is all the reality of life. We're talking about getting out of the way of pulling energy on drag from the rust, from too much tension or too much stickiness, and putting that energy into the things that are generating revenue, right? And that's where we start to see this change, is that we can't beat the laws of nature. So lean into it and create an environment where you're going to move more freely.
Love it. Ryan, if people want to find out more about what you do, or they want to follow you so they can tap into more of your great content, how can they get hold of you? Where do they go?
Yeah, RyanChute.com is the most common place to find me. That's where all my socials are housed as well. But I'm also on all pretty much all socials at Wizard Ryan Chute.
Brilliant. And I have an expression that I talk about all the time, and I'm going to put a spin on it. So I talk about simplicity scales, complexity fails. And now I'm going to start talking about frictionless scales, friction fails. I'm going to add
Mm.
that into my quote, because you've certainly sparked and put that at the forefront of my conscious mind. So, from all the listeners from the Life of Business Leader, Ryan, thank you so much for coming on today. Some real golden nuggets that I know people will be able to take away. The key is, are you a frictionless business leader? And how can you take this concept of a frictionless business and almost go back to your business, walk through your business with a fresh pair of eyes, and see if unconsciously there are friction points that have uh, found their way into your business that you need to remove so that your flywheel is turning fast. So, for me, as the host of Life of Business Leader, and from Ryan, goodbye for now.